The Spin-off Podcast Network.
There's no better feeling than a personal win, and the State Farm Personal Price Plan can help you do just that. Talk to a State Farm agent today to learn how you can bundle and save with the Personal Price Plan. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Prices are based on rating plans that vary by state. Coverage options are selected by the customer. Availability, amount of discounts and savings, and eligibility vary by state.
This week on The Spin-off, we're releasing our most ambitious pop culture project yet. Are you ready? Introducing the top 100 New Zealand TV shows of the 21st century. Our panel of experts and in-house couch potatoes have pulled together a list of countless shows, whittled them down to the final 100 and set about composing this love letter to a quarter century of local television. The countdown is on to number 1. Read now on thespinoff.co.nz.
You're listening to Business is Boring, a podcast that reckons it's anything but. Business is Boring is brought to you by SparkLab, offering inspiration and practical advice to help businesses find their edge. To hear more about SparkLab, including details about the latest events, workshops, and business tools, visit sparklab.co.nz. And now, here's your host, Simon Pound.
Kia ora koutou katoa. Welcome to Business is Boring. This year, Nature Baby celebrate 25 years in business. The brand has been built on organic, natural, long-lasting and well-made baby wear with a retail model strong on community. Co-founders Jacob and Georgia Faull became interested in organics in London and, spotting a gap in the market on return to New Zealand, have built the idea from mail order and early internet shopping to employing more than 50 people and selling through Australasia and the world. They're marking the quarter century with a new circularity program, Worn Again, and a new plan to head back to the States. To talk making it in the hardest of businesses, quality and the future, co-founder Jacob Faull joins us now. Tanakwe, thank you for being here.
Thanks, Simon, for having me on.
Hey, congratulations, man. 25 years in the rag trade, especially in like retail and manufacturing and making something like baby wear with so much competition and making such a great business is such an amazing result.
Thank you very much. I mean, every day has its challenges. And I think like a parent where you're growing a family, you're just taking every day as it is and watching it grow and adapting as it gets bigger.
Yeah, and looking forward to digging into some of the things that you've done to make it work. But maybe like take it back to the beginning. Like, how did you first get interested in the space of like organic clothing and baby wear?
Well, as students, we were living in Ponsonby, Greylin, and we would always go to Harvest for our shopping. And so there was an iconic institution, a health food store.
RIP.
Yeah, exactly. We want to bring it back. And so we were always buying from the bulk bins. We were predominantly vegetarian and always looking to make the best use of ingredients. And so we always had that bent. And then we were at art school. My wife was doing art history, my girlfriend at the time. And it was sort of a mix of both of those things. One, looking at things through an artistic lens, which was all about making and what was the content, what were you trying to say, and then living in a way that was really resourceful, as you had to do as a student, but also we were naturally drawn towards things which were made in a really good way.
Mm. And in the market when you began, like 25 years ago is, it's not that long, but it's quite long in the context of the internet, the way people shop, the massive waves of change that changed the retail model, distribution, all of this stuff, right? So what was the market like when you began selling?
It was very traditional. It was very much about, store to customer selling. It was pre-website, so it was mail order. So it was a very direct relationship with the customer. In terms of marketing and getting your content out, it was a lot flatter. You would prepare a message, you would design it, you'd get it out, and you would hope people would see it and come and engage with you.
And were there many options for organic? Because, in many ways, kind of, organic fabrics, well-made clothes, things that last. They're very old ideas, right? It's just we've gone through this big wave of making everything cheaply and shoddily and, in the worst ways possible. But yeah, what was the market like when you began in terms of being able to get clothes like that? I guess not from just a Sunday market or something.
Yeah, exactly. I think what you originally said in terms of going back to how things were made, that's all the time, that's what we're looking to do. And I think being kids we grew up, we were 8 or 9 in the 80s, so we were fed plastic all the time. Plastic was a great new material. That was innovative, and it was seemingly durable and cheap. And then I think we got to the end of the 90s, and as we were starting the business, and as we started to see where synthetics and plastics had ended up, which was starting to go into the environment, starting to be endocrine disruptors in products. We had a very cynical view of modern materials and this great love of authentic materials, which organic fabrics just really resonated with us. And so in that market, when we were going to have our first child, we were in London. And we travelled up through India on our OE, and we had this kind of a beautiful journey in our heads of going through India and then up through the changing Eastern Bloc, Romania, Bulgaria, all the way up through to, we wanted to end up in Warsaw, where there was all this change happening. And so we did India. We had to fly back to London to then get another flight to Turkey to start that beginning journey. And when we got to London, we found out we were going to have a baby. Uh-huh. And I was like, oh, what are we going to do? We have to, suddenly we're not these wandering art kids, and we have to make a living. We've got to provide for the family and, take it all a bit more seriously. And so we set up a stall at the Spitalfield Markets in the East End in London. And we were selling recycled sari cushions that we'd bought in Rajasthan. And we'd stuff them in our flat and we'd take them in a bag on the train to the market and we'd set up a stall and we'd sell them there. And when we were there, it was at that time that the east of London was just starting to transform. All the artists were living there, and there was great food and great exhibitions. And at the Spitalfield Markets, there was an organic baker, there were designers, and there was a group called WEN, which is the Women's Environmental Network. And they were championing this idea that through our consumer behaviour, we could make these changes to support things that were more sustainable, more about reusing and a kind of a lighter footprint. And there were no products in the market that kind of fulfilled that vision for baby at that time, but there was this idea that it could be done and it should be done, and that's really where it started. So when we came back to New Zealand, we came back and loved coming back because you could come back and you could have a piece of lawn out the back of your flat that you couldn't have in London, but there was no kind of consciousness around that. So it felt like a very empty market. But we had all these ideas that we wanted to create for our child, not even really as a business. And so we started to research that and look for organic cotton that we'd find in Egypt and India, and that's how it started through that.
And not an easy kind of market, right? Because we're kind of in the absolute throes of TNT children's wear, $2 for a clip through and, almost single-use disposable mindset to clothing. It's so cheap, who cares how well it's made? The baby's only going to need it for a few months.
Yeah.
How do you go about establishing something that's the opposite in all of that and has that bigger cost factor, right? Like, because you started in New Zealand, smaller scale, better production, better materials. It means it's a lot more expensive.
Yeah, a lot more expensive. And it's a real challenge. And I think for 25 years, we've been pushing this idea and message of if you want something that is best for your baby, you've got to have something that is best for the environment and best for the people. So they've got a world that's hopeful for them to grow up in. And it's just starting to pivot now where sustainability and circularity come into the mix, which can only be played out if the product is of high quality. And so we started working about 5 years ago with a business in New York called Mini Moons who were hiring out baby clothes. And so they'd buy them off us and then they'd rent them out and then they'd take them back and they'd launder it and it would go round and round. And they started doing testing and at how long these garments would last and how much the cost of renting them out would be. And so a Nature Baby garment, which was, say, $30, which would last about 8 times, would cost around, I think, $3.50 or $4 per hire, whereas something over there is a brand called Carter's would only last 2 children. And so, but you could buy it for $10, but then the rental was higher at $5 per use. So the economics of buying into higher quality only starts to play out as circular and secondary markets start to kick in. And I think that's where we've ended up as a business, starting off as these naive young parents who just wanted the best for their baby and approached it in a way of, if as makers and communities, if we made that product, how would we do it? To then get this product to share with other parents, parent to parent. We followed all the way through. This is the best that we can deliver. It's going to be the best for your baby. But every time I think that the cost, because we're human, we need things to be cheaper because life's so expensive. Every time it comes up against cost. So people see Nature Baby maybe as a luxury or organic as a luxury. And we're turning that into organic as quality that can be used many times.
And it's so true, right? Like you go through Save Mart or thrift stores today and things that were made in like the 70s, 80s are still charging.
Yep.
The things that are made through the 90s and the 2000s and the 2010s, like they are crap,
Yep.
you know, terrible
Yep.
materials, terrible construction, terrible
Yep.
make. You know, they were kind of like junk on production.
Yeah. And most of these clothes are ending up in Africa or third world countries where they're either going through as some secondary economy or sometimes as aid, and they just get dumped there. And so at the pace things are going now with massive businesses like Temu and Shein and many others, the cost to recycle those is becoming higher than the value that they can sell those at. Because they're just not lasting, and it's a huge problem.
Yeah, aren't those things interesting? Like it actually felt in the rag trade like H&M and Zara and some of these really big makers were finally starting to clean up their sourcing, supply, manufacture and have some standards. And then the market just like goes, okay, well, we'll bring in the Temu and the Shines and
It
stuff.
just sets to the next level.
There's absolutely no oversight or
Yeah.
consistency at all. And it's just back to like volume and awfulness.
Yeah, it's the sad reality that human behaviour is often selfish. We're meeting these needs of, you know, in fashion we're looking for something, or in clothes, something that's new, something that makes us feel part of the tribe, and something that has, you know, comes at a value that we can afford. So if you line all those things up, it's very hard for individuals to make a decision when a plethora of cheap products is put in front of them. But I guess that's the challenge as a human race that we have in front of us.
And you are in such a nice part of the market with baby stuff, right? Because it's like optimistic and special and it's a new day and, you know, it's great. So tell me about how you got Nature Baby off the ground. And 25 years ago, you mentioned mail order, but also really early into internet shopping, right?
Yes. So one, but babies is the love industry. You know, whenever people come to us, they've fallen in love. They've created this version of themselves. There's a mixture of both people. It really is a beautiful industry, and so there's always hope and desire for newness. And when we started, it was in our flat in Ponsonby. We had a front room, we had a fax machine, and we had shelves with stock on it. And we would be at the home we'd just had a baby ourselves, sitting by the fax machine, waiting for these orders to come through while sending emails out to suppliers around the world and around New Zealand to give birth to organic products, both organic cotton and organic wool, which hadn't even started. And so it was a mixture of kind of slightly disorganized parents fumbling through a new baby and then and a new business. And it started with mail order, but then our customers were ringing us up and they wanted to see the products. And 9 months later, we started the store in Grey Lynn, back at a time where there was the aforementioned Harvest Whole Foods. And there was only a couple of other stores. I mean, now it's full. And so there were a lot of stores there that were boarded up with mirrored windows running as offices. And so we took one of those on and refitted it out as a store, which was next to the organic butcher that was there in Grey Lynn.
It's such a nice ritual, I guess, you know, because there's the hope and optimism of being an expectant parent and also the absolutely shitting yourself and like you really want to get it right.
It's so hard.
Wanting to kind
all the
of
time
kit stuff out so you've got things right and you're doing things well. And like, yeah, having all those people coming in and being able to touch and feel and kind of buy these is a bit of a ritual, right? And I mean, often you don't have to buy anything for your own kids until they stop being cute enough that things just turn up, right? Like 3 to 6 months.
Yes.
But other people wanting to get those first things for your children.
Yeah, it's a real experience. And I think even at the very beginning when you're about to have a baby and it hasn't arrived, and so you go there to almost visualize what it's going to be like. You know, you hold up a garment, you look at these little shoes, and you go, how cute are these little things? And I think I think all friends and family love being part of that ritual because it's a form of a new start. It's a positive new start where if there was ever going to be change, it's happening then.
We'll be back in a moment with Jacob to chat growing Nature Baby and what's next at 25 years. Spark is proud to partner with the Sustainable Business Network and the Climate Action Toolbox. The free Climate Action Toolbox can provide you with simple step-by-step guides to measure and reduce your emissions. Help lead the way to a low-carbon future for New Zealand. Visit sparklab.co.nz/sustainability to find out more.
Does your brand have something important to say through meaningful messaging that reaches the right audience? At The Spin-Off, we work closely with our partners to create bespoke campaigns that bring value to both your brand and our audience. If you're interested in learning more about partnering with us, email Beck, that's BEC, at thespinoff.co.nz.
Kia ora, this is Toby Manhire, here to urge you to tune in to Gone by Lunchtime, a podcast with me, Annabelle Lee Mather and Ben Thomas, tackling the world of New Zealand politics, from policy to polling, from scandal to psychodrama. Listen to Gone by Lunchtime, brought to you by the Spin-Off Podcast Network, wherever good pods are sold.
Hoki mai anō. Welcome back to Business is Boring, where we're with Jacob Faull of Nature Baby. So where is the business today? Like, what's the scale today?
We're, I guess you could say, an Australasian wholesale retail and online business with green shoots around the world, predominantly in the US. So we have 4 stores, 2 in Auckland, 1 in Wellington, and then we opened a store last year in Sydney, in Paddington. And we online is available throughout the world with a focus on New Zealand and Australia and the US and EU.
And it's not kind of the first time to the US, right? Like earlier on in the business. Tell me about your first big push into the US with J. Crew.
Well, we're a family of 5, so we had 3 kids, and we were running what was already quite a big business in New Zealand. And we held back pushing overseas because we didn't want to travel. We couldn't sort of sustain that as a family, so it was very much focused on the New Zealand market. But we would wholesale, so companies would approach us because we were one of the beginning organic baby businesses, and then we would start selling to their stores. And so we had this one store in New York called Sweet William, which was a store started up by an ex-Vogue editor who had a baby and then started a baby business. And so we were part of her store. And one day, a guy called Mickey Drexler, who is the CEO of J. Crew, went into that store, and he was buying products for his own family, and he bought Nature Baby, and he fell in love with the products. So it was a very personal, CEO-driven decision, and they contacted us, and like, who are these guys? J. Crew. It just sounds like a very all American business, and how can a New Zealand business fit into that? But the more we dug into it, we saw it was this really beautiful and big business that had their own core range and style, but they'd work with other smaller businesses. So a sail bag maker in Newport, or a Swedish shoemaker, and then for baby it was Nature Baby. And so they'd work with businesses like that and have it alongside their well-made but mass-produced products to help tell the story of, I guess, craftsmanship and individuality and character. And so we started working with them, and then there was a creative director called Jenna Lyons, who was a powerhouse in the US, who also, she had a son and was buying Nature Baby, and we'd make kind of special products for them. Their kids are starting to grow up, so they had an 8-year-old, and they said that we want 8-year-old organic long johns, and we go, right, we'll make that up for you. And so we made sure we really looked after them because it was such a family connection. And then, in turn, we became the biggest selling baby label in J. Crew. We started to appear in their kids' stores, and it was a huge success. Our online sales, started to triple and quadruple. And then we'd start to see our products start appearing in movies and start appearing on celebrities that were starting to pick it up as J. Crew was in its height. So we were accidentally in there as part of a business at its high performance in that market.
Super exciting for a small New Zealand business, right? To get that kind of pick up, and the scale of like one order can be, huge amount of money. What happened with that journey as J. Crew went from, a very storied leader in the space to being part of the great wave of change in retail, hey?
Yeah, it's really interesting. And I always love working with American businesses because they're at the forefront of sociological change. So whatever they start to go through, we're going to start seeing in 5 years' time. Running a business at that size with so many stores just became impractical. And so as trends change, because people like different things, to be able to pivot is very, very hard. And so when you're running something at that scale, you just have to be really cognizant that you're able to keep up with it. So I think in going through that experience, and I mean, for us, we're still parents at home with 3 kids, trying to get them off to school, trying to get the laundry done. And it was although it was big, it wasn't the biggest part of our business. So financially, that didn't matter to us. But what we started to learn is that as that shifted and the dominance of online businesses started to come through, what do we start to look to do as a business that, right back to the beginning of the story, is very traditional, looks at, not traditional in conservative values, but traditional in terms of making values, do as things start to progress really fast. And I think that gave birth to the next iteration of what Nature Baby started to do about five years ago.
And what was that? Was that the big push into community? And, like if you can't have a mass-produced store in every mall, which is, the old J. Crew model, where if you have a bad season, suddenly you're absolutely cooked. Like, find your people and look after them.
Exactly, yeah. So we've always situated ourselves in these inner city suburbs where there's high density of people, and there's a consciousness of the way people think about how they consume, and just look to nurture that. So we've always had that relationship of people coming in because they're having a baby and they're talking about how they're living. We took that an extra step and started building these ideas of community kitchens into our stores, not as an experience for an experience sake, but as a place that was useful to parents. You can come in, sit down, you can have a tea or coffee, you can change your baby, you can feed your baby, which as parents, if we remember back to those times, just getting out of the house was hard enough. Going shopping and finding a place where you could look after your baby is even harder. It's quite an ostracizing experience. So we really leaned into that and looked at how can we support them. We started working with other organic and sustainable brands like Kakako Coffee, Boring Oat Milk, Ceres Organics, who helped us provide these things that could build up our pantry. We looked at midwives and other practitioners that maybe didn't have a fixed space because their practice was so spread and nomadic, where they could come in and work in those spaces for free to do a practice that they genuinely love doing, but are generally underpaid. And so it was a big coming together of all those pieces, but the same principle. If you can tend and make something in the best way possible to support the new change is what we're all about.
And along that journey, now 25 years in, I think one of the coolest things that I've seen in the conversations about this milestone for you are the stories of the multi-generational use of the clothes, and that lovely story of the, toddler who was the model and now she's a mother and her baby are in the clothes.
I know.
That's so cool. Tell us about that, and then how that led you into this idea of this new circularity idea, Worn Again.
Well, I think parenthood at its base is multi-generational. So there's this idea of handing on knowledge or handing on products to the next generation. So, so we can at least learn at this next step and we can progress. So I think being a business that's focused on quality and at this experience where you come in and it's just trying to make it as beautiful as possible, people have this attachment to nature baby garments that they really want to hold on to. So a lot of feedback we'll get is that nature baby is the only product they'll either hold on to because they want to keep it, or that they'll pass it on and it can go through many children.
Pass it on and they'll ask for it back.
Yeah. Well, yes, because it's got high value and it's useful. And the idea of if it was worn by your first and second child and it's gone through 3 of your friends' children and it's come back to you and it's still in good condition, that garment's got such a good story and such a positive vibe that it's just a beautiful thing to have. And anecdotally, we would get those stories coming back. We didn't necessarily set out to do this. This was a selfish need of trying to provide the best for our baby, but a kind of very altruistic kind of vision for how we make in the best way. And then that's what gives birth to the high use. And so what we started to find out was under a microscope, if you look at the fibers, so if you look at an organic fiber, cotton fiber, to a conventional cotton fiber, the conventional cotton fiber will be kind of a little bit jaggedy, and maybe there's some weak points in there and a little bit rough, whereas an organic fiber is longer, it's kind of more full, and it's stronger. And when we make, or when anyone makes, they've got the choice to choose A, B, C, or D fibers out of conventional or organic. And what that means is you scoop up from long to short. And so if you go A, you're using the longer fibers, which generally means it's silkier, but it's stronger, because when you spin something together that's longer, the chance of it breaking is less. So if you have a fibre that's a little bit brittle, and in conventional cotton farming, you're drenching it in herbicides and pesticides because it's such a pest-ridden product, that it starts to have a impact on that cotton. And then when you are going back to the TNT idea, if you're buying something really cheap, it's being made out of cheap cotton, so therefore they are using the cheapest part of that cotton to create that, so it's not going to last. And so by virtue of looking to make things as well as possible, we've ended up with this fibre that is soft and silky and pure for a baby, but it also lasts so long.
Cotton's an amazing bellwether of the world, right? And the socio-political ideas around production. You look at cotton today, and the only way cotton gets cheaper is if you are using a lot of water without having to pay for it, using a lot of chemicals because it is such a pest, pests love the crop, and if you have incredibly cheap labour because it's still incredibly human-centric in its picking and production, right? And so you get places like Uzbekistan that have become the world leaders, and essentially it's like, water at the expense of food, slave labour essentially, and no environmental controls around the chlorination, the bleaching. Any kind of measure, it's like, it's bad, right?
It's so exploitable. And I think any large-scale commodity is, and that is the world we live in. And I think there's this delicate dance that we have between, how we grow and how we make, and the true cost of things. And I think there's certain inevitabilities to products so our organic cotton, which is grown in India, which is one of the most fertile countries in the world, because they have the Himalayas and they have monsoon seasons. And so the monsoons roll in, they hit the Himalayas, and then it rolls back through the full country. And then people irrigate either responsibly or irresponsibly off that. And so the farmers that are making the organic cotton generally are responsible. So they're looking at things, it's kind of funny, like here we talk about Indigenous practices being ones to look to, because it's a look at the land and the resources and the connection to that. And in India, they are the indigenous culture, and they do have practices which go back thousands of years that they were still using up until the 80s, which fed into biodynamic and organic farming. So things like, I don't know what they call it, Preparation 500 or 2000, where they put cow dung into a cow horn, bury it under, the worms go through it, and they come out with this high-grade fertilizer that Rudolf Steiner championed, was a Hindu farming method. And so you've got a country which has got cheap labour because it is a cheaper place to live, which you don't have to exploit. It just is that way. It's cheaper for someone to live in India than it is to live into Western world, but paid fairly and farmed in a way that is looking at sustainable or regenerative farming practices is possible, but it just costs more that other businesses aren't paying for up front.
Tell me about what you've learned along the way in designing the circularity from places like Patagonia and Many Moons and these kind of leaders around the world in circular thinking.
One, that we're all just trying to do the best that we can, and in looking at products, starting off looking to make products in the best way using high quality materials, looking at maybe more a classical design philosophy than fast fashion. We have to tell new stories each season because people get bored of the old story, but doing it in a way that is not necessarily bound to a year or a time. And I think Patagonia have done a great way of telling that story of something that is about the use of a product if you're a surfer or a climber or a tramper, that has connection to design philosophy. So their design is sort of timeless, although you could say it's very particular. And with Many Moons, they're looking to take that but go deeper. So with Patagonia, I think 2% of their products get brought back into the circular economy. And behind Patagonia is a business called Trove, And Trove is tasked with making businesses circular. So it's a business, and they support business. So they'll take product back through, they'll launder it, and they'll resell it. What Many Moons is doing is looking to control that whole line. So rather than we'll just take back anything, they go, we'll only buy into organic and high quality baby products because we know that they'll last. And they'll last until they need to be recycled. And when they get recycled, they can go back into natural materials. You can't do that as easily with synthetic materials. And so I think the world and brands are coming to terms with that, going, what are they making out of? What is the technology to recycle? But I think first and foremost, we've got to look at how many times can we use this before it goes into that recycling program.
Yeah, and those shared ownership models, like I'm gonna have a baby of the age of 0 to 3 months, only for 3 months.
Yeah.
So maybe I only need it for 3 months. Makes a lot of sense. Whereas, maybe if you're buying a hiking jacket, maybe you're going to hike for 10 years in it. So maybe it does make sense to own it, or maybe it makes sense to rent it. There's a few other ways there.
I know, and how that model works. And I think what we saw with Many Moons in the US is, and back to us as humans, it's harder for us to rent things like clothes in our own minds. And but if you can turn that into a circular model where they're not renting, but they're buying it, but they're effectively renting it because they're bringing it back and it's going to a model. So they are either deciding to buy something that's new or deciding to buy something secondhand. So suddenly you have more agency, which means you're gonna make better decisions. Whereas I think if you're looking to rent baby clothes, because I think renting baby clothes in the States didn't work out as they thought it would, but circular did. And there were other businesses in Scandinavia that were doing baby clothes rental, which also didn't work. So I think, it's not perfect. People are trying different models, but for a jacket, for a lawnmower, for a drill.
For a drill? The drills per use on drills is one of my favorite kind of ideas, right? Where everyone's like, put a picture up, I better buy a drill. It's like,
I know. We just want to own. We just want to own
about
things
4 times.
Yeah. You need on every street. You need a cupboard of tools that you could borrow. It'd be amazing.
And then you've been very intentional over the years about growth, right? Like not wanting to because a lot of places could be kind of 4 stores and stuff after just a couple of years, and then suddenly you expand to 30 and, blow up, right?
Yeah.
Like you've been incredibly intentional about growth. And now, 25 years in, once something's become kind of part of the culture, right? Then it looks like it was always going to be a success. But what were the moments where you knew it was working? And were there times where it didn't feel like it was going to work?
I think in business there are always times when you don't think it's going to work because you've got so many changes going through. I think we just started with this real hope and idealism, and had no other focus. So we were just strapped in to make it work all the way through. And I think there's moments of getting the J. Crew contract or seeing online sales grow exponentially, where you go, people are really getting it. People are buying into it. But, the market is brutal. You're doing well at something, other ones will come in. There'll be copies, there'll be other versions, which is good because you want as many people to be in the space as possible. But you've only got a certain amount of an audience. So you're continually looking to innovate and fight every day to keep your business going. And I think there were moments like when COVID came through and it's like, it's all over. I was like, I've got all these clothes in a warehouse that we would have been selling, and now we can't sell them. And as we know, it was the opposite. People were buying, people were shopping at home deeply, and that took off. And then post-COVID, you have inflation mixed with a recession. So you've got shrinking profits and a shrinking audience. And So you go through moments where you go, this is the vision. This is super successful. It's got all the reasons to make it work. But then the market realities comes in and it slaps you around, and you really have to react and be innovative and look at the long term from there.
And what have you learned along the way to allow for that? Because you kind of need like in an ideal world, you have enough buffer so you can ride out the hard times. But the reality of so many businesses, especially inventory-based businesses and growing businesses, like growing can knock you off faster than like not growing. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
One little misstep if you've really lifted production and you're cooked.
Yeah.
What have you learned along the way to allow you to think long term?
I think it's just that we haven't grown as fast as we could have, which has been a good thing. So we haven't extended ourselves beyond what we can financially manage ourselves. And we've looked to have a diversification that is stores, online and wholesale. So we're able to be able to operate at each level as well as in different countries. So if we see the New Zealand market, which is a little suppressed at the moment, whereas Australia is taking off. So you're able to balance things. And so as you grow and you start to have America in the mix, that will have its own rhythm. And so you're protected a little bit from weathering storms in individual countries, and it's always changing, and no one knows exactly where it's going to go.
What advice would you have for someone wanting to start something that comes from like a belief in something, but I'll bet that people told you, well, that'll never work.
Yeah. Even my parents told me that wouldn't even work. And I was like, you're my parents, you're meant to give me hope. And we'd be opposite Harvest in our store and selling organic cotton, and we were kind of art school hippies, but we were kind of a mix of both. And we'd have the hippies who I love come in and they wouldn't buy anything. They would go, this is you don't need this, or organic vegetables I understand, but organic cotton, what's the purpose of that? And so I think you look at the world, you investigate things, you create a set of beliefs that you can live, that you can live your life by in a progressive way. Don't kind of rest on old beliefs. Research the world and see where it's going, and just hold on tightly as much as possible to those, because that's what will get you through. And really, that's what starts to disappear. The older you get, and the older the world gets, but you have to hold on to them. Yeah,
like that's such a nice idea, eh? Like part of that progressive ideas isn't just holding on to the progressive ideas you started with. It's progressing, right?
It is. It's always changing, and you can't be dogmatic or have a doctrine. You have to be open to change, and I think because that's inevitable.
And as a final thought, like, what will success be for you, and what will success be for the business?
I think the success for me and my wife would be, I guess, a sense of freedom from this. So creating a business that ultimately can run without us, and that part of that growth has been about that, bringing in the team to be able to grow it. And I think for the business, entering into something that is multi-generational, that holds a set of values that the business can operate to and still grow, but still be around in 150 or 200 years. Whatever that looks like, what is a conscious approach to connected and sustainable living that means that everybody gets something out of that process, and we end up happy. What does that look like? Might not even be organic cotton, might be something else, but carrying on that idea that relates to this idea of nature and baby, which is nature as environment, this place we live in, and baby of change and a new hope. So taking those concepts all the way through.
Yeah, love it. Well, can't wait to see where it goes next. I mean, with the growth into the States again, and it's day one in many ways, right?
It is.
And yeah, it's so cool to hear the story so far. Thanks for sharing it today.
Cool. Thank you so much, Simon.
Cool. Thank you so much to Jacob Faull, co-founder at Nature Baby. Thank you for having us along and listening. And thank you to everyone who helps make this happen, like our producer, Te Aihe Butler. If you do like what we do, please do rate and leave a review. It really does help. E noho rā.
From the Spin-Off Podcast Network, that was Business is Boring, brought to you by SparkLab. Make sure you're following Business is Boring wherever you get your podcasts. And for more information on SparkLab, visit sparklab.co.nz.
Kia ora, I'm Duncan Grieve, founder of The Spin-Off. You can help us keep all of The Spin-Off's award-winning journalism free for everybody by becoming a member today at thespinoff.co.nz/donate.
Talofa lava. I'm Madeline Chapman, editor at The Spin-Off. If you have the means, consider supporting our high-quality journalism by becoming a Spin-Off member. Sign up now at thespinoff.co.nz/donate.
The Spin-Off Podcast Network.